Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In today's lecture, we will briefly discuss about the functions of the hypothalamus. Now, hypothalamus act is a link between the nervous system and endocrine system. Of the body. It controls release of hormones, some directly via pituitary gland and some indirectly. Now, second function, it is the chief master gland of the body. Hypothalamus is considered as the real endocrine engine of the body. It controls the release or inhibition of important hormones of the body. It acts directly on the pituitary gland and indirectly on the other endocrine glands of the body. In this way, the hypothalamus keep our body in homeostasis. Because homeostasis is a vast subject, this is why hypothalamus has so many functions and very important. Another function of the hypothalamus is the hormone production. Some of the nuclei of the hypothalamus, they produce hormones and various factors. Hormones, for example, oxytocin and ADH are antidiuretic hormones and various releasing hormones. And release inhibitory hormones. Hormones like oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin, and also produce releasing factors and release inhibiting factors, which control the secretion of different endocrine glands of the body. It also acts as a higher center for autonomic nervous system. Also act as a higher center. for autonomic nervous system, of the body. So because hypothalamus is considered as a higher center for the autonomic system, this is why it is also considered as head ganglion of autonomic nervous system. Now, various autonomic activities are integrated are controlled and integrated by hypothalamus. Apart from hypothalamus acting as a higher integrating center for autonomic nervous system, there are other higher center also. For example, apart from hypothalamus, there are other higher centers or higher integrating centers or brainstem reticular formation. Brainstem reticular formation act as one of the higher center for integrating autonomic nervous system. Then limbic cortex of the limbic lobe also act as a integrating center for autonomic nervous system, autonomic activities. And prefrontal cortex also has very important role. Prefrontal cortex also has an important role as an integrating center. So hypothalamus is a integrating center, higher center for integrating and control the autonomic activities of the body, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And apart from hypothalamus, the brainstem reticular formation, then limbic system, cortex, and then prefrontal cortex, they also has a role in integrating the autonomic nervous system. So because hypothalamus is one of the higher center for this purpose, therefore, as I told you, hypothalamus acts as a head ganglion for autonomic nervous system. Now all these autonomic activities are integrated by these higher centers, especially hypothalamus, except some of the reflexes, for example, urination, defecation, etc. These autonomic activities are integrated at spinal cord level. Micturition, defecation, reflexes, they are integrated and controlled by spinal cord instead of higher centers just we discussed. Now, as you know, we have parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. Now, what are the nuclei of hypothalamus which integrate these autonomic activities? Hypothalamic nuclei responsible for this activity. Now, parasympathetic nervous system, which is controlled mainly by anterior nucleus of hypothalamus. Anterior nucleus of hypothalamus. This is why this region, this zone of the hypothalamus, it also known as trophotropic zone of Hess. Trophotropic zone of Hess, especially the anterior nucleus of the hypothalamus, control parasympathetic activity. Then second, sympathetic activities, sympathetic nervous system. It is mainly the posterior nucleus of hypothalamus. Posterior nucleus of hypothalamus. Now, this zone which controls the sympathetic activity or sympathetic nervous system also has a name known as the ergotropic zone of Hess. So these are the main nuclei of the hypothalamus which are concerned with the integration and control of sympathetic and parasympathetic activities. The parasympathetic activity controlled by anterior nucleus, controlled and integrated by anterior nucleus of the hypothalamus, and the sympathetic activities are integrated and controlled by the posterior nucleus. Now, autonomic nervous system, it is under the influence of prefrontal cortex. The autonomic nervous system is under the inhibitory influence of prefrontal cortex. Of cerebrum. So this is why destruction of this prefrontal cortex, it results in a massive reaction. If prefrontal cortex is damaged, it results in a massive reaction exhibited by the animal known as sham rage. If the prefrontal cortex is ablated or damaged in animals. So this destruction of this prefrontal cortex, it results in massive reaction exhibited by the animal or individual, and this reaction is known as sham rage. The animal gives a posture of attacking and defensive nature. There is a piloerection, the pupil become dilated, the claws, they are raised, the animal, the pupils are dilated. This is the effect of ablation or damage to the prefrontal cortex, because prefrontal cortex has inhibitory influence on the autonomic nervous system. Next function hypothalamus act as a osmometer. Of the body. It gives response to osmotic changes in the blood, and it is only the supraoptic nucleus of hypothalamus it releases hormone antidiuretic hormone or ADH or vasopressin. So in response to osmotic changes, the preoptic nucleus of the hypothalamus is activated. The supraoptic nucleus, sorry, not supraoptic nucleus of the hypothalamus. And it's secrete antidiuretic hormone. So when the osmolality of the blood is high, when it is raised, then there is increased secretion of ADH. And when there is increased secretion of ADH, it results in passing of concentrated urine when concentrated urine is passed, fluid is retained in the body, therefore blood volume increases. And when the blood volume is increased, osmolality is reduced. the osmotic pressure of the blood is reduced. In this way, the hypothalamus, its supraoptic nucleus, is considered as osmometer. Number 6. Hypothalamus regulate metabolic processes of the body. Metabolic processes, and especially it is concerned with the carbohydrate and lipid metabolism. Next, the control of appetitive drives, another function. Control the appetitive drive. That is, control hunger and thirst. It also acts as a thermoregulator. Hypothalamus also acts as a thermoregulator of the body. Therefore, it acts as a thermostat. Number 9. Act as a biological clock of the body. It regulates sleep-wake cycle. Hypothalamus regulate sleep-wake cycle. Sleep-wake cycle of circadian rhythm. So it acts as a biological clock. This is why it is also known as circadian clock. Circadian clock of the body, and it is also known as mind's clock. Of the body. Number 10. control emotional and behavioral drives. Hypothalamus is related to the emotions and behavior. Now, how we define stress? One of the definition of stress: anything that threatens homeostasis is known as stress. Anything that threatens homeostasis of the body. Is defined as a stress. Now, because as I told you that one of the major function of hypothalamus is to maintain body homeostasis. Now, the mental conditions, behavioral conditions, etc., for example, stress, that will threaten the homeostasis. So, the hypothalamus, it controls emotional and behavioral drives. It controls the homeostasis. The hypothalamus control homeostasis of the body via endocrine and autonomic nervous system, mainly endocrine system and autonomic nervous system. And other systems are also involved in this function. So because it has also connection with the limbic system, so the hypothalamus via limbic system, it control fear, anger, anger, aggression, pleasure, pleasure, expression of emotions, etc. These are controlled by the hypothalamus. Now, the emotions also affect the body visceral system. Also affect, for example, somebody is emotionally upset, his heart rate will increase, or peristalsis of the alimentary canal will also enhance. It is the mammillary bodies which provide pathways for which emotional drives can affect the visceral function, cardiovascular system, GIT, etc. Next, the hypothalamus control various sexual activities. control sexual activities, control sexual desire, control sexual desire, sexual expression and reproduction. And reproduction. And there are some hormones which are important in this regard. For example, pituitary gonadotropins. Oxytocin and prolactin. Some of these hormones like pituitary gonadotropins, oxytocin, prolactin has a role in these hormones, has a role in the production, coitus. Parturition and suckling. Now this was about the role of hypothalamus in controlling the sexual activities. Hypothalamus also have a very important role in memory. You know, the mammillary bodies create recent memory. Now, because hypothalamus has connection with the mammillary body, this is why hypothalamus has an important role in memory. For example, the hippocampus mammillary body is a source of connection between hippocampus and thalamus. For example, it has a connection, it connects the hippocampus, connect the hippocampus with thalamus. And you know, hippocampus is an important part of the limbic system. So, in other words, the mammillary body connects the limbic system with the thalamus, and then again it connects the limbic system with cerebral cortex. The hippocampus or limbic system with cerebral cortex. So in this way, the hypothalamus has an important role in memory. Number 13, it has influence on CVS, cardiovascular system, hypothalamus. Modulation of somatovascular system of the body. Next, circulating blood monitor, act as a monitor. Hypothalamus, some nuclei of the hypothalamus act as a blood monitor. Circulating blood is constantly monitored by hypothalamus, which functions as thermoreceptor. Hypothalamus acts as a thermoreceptor to monitor the blood temperature, and thus the hypothalamus control it. In this way, the hypothalamus acts as a thermoreceptor. Then hypothalamus is also influenced by osmotic pressure of the blood. So this is why it acts as osmoreceptor. Hypothalamus also acts as a osmoreceptor or chemoreceptor. So these were the functions of hypothalamus, and has so many functions because it has an important role in maintaining the body homeostasis. So this was just a summary of these functions. Now in the last lecture we talked about various nuclei of the hypothalamus. Which nuclei of the hypothalamus they are responsible for these functions of the hypothalamus? That will be the topic of our next lecture. So thank you very much.